What's the importance of state, of a more state, of organizing a body of people to represent your jurisdiction? What's the purpose of writing a constitution? What's the purpose of creating a flag, creating a seal, having elections and inaugurations? What's the purpose of acceding to treaties, declarations, conventions? What's the purpose with uh, taking those documents to the United Nations and putting them on file? What's the purpose of all this? I'm going to read you a court decision from 1952, France versus the United States of America. Maybe some of these points will resonate with you, but I'll leave that up to you. For these reasons, the court, on the submission of the government of the French Republic, unanimously rejects its submission relating to the decree of December 30th, 1948, issued by the Resident General of the French Republic of Morocco. Unanimously finds that the United States of America is entitled, by virtue of the provisions of its treaty with Morocco of September the 16th, 1836, to exercise in the French zone of Morocco consular jurisdiction in all disputes, civil or criminal, between citizens or protégés of the United States. By 10 votes to 1, finds that the United States of America is also entitled by virtue of the General Act of Algeciras, April 7, 1906, to exercise in the French zone of Morocco consular jurisdiction in all cases, civil or criminal, brought against citizens or protégés of the United States to the extent required by the provisions of the Act relating to consular jurisdiction. Well, let's break that down. The United States of America is entitled by virtue of the provisions of its treaty with Morocco of September the 16th, 1836, to exercise in the French zone of Morocco consular jurisdiction in all disputes, civil or criminal. Which means the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the United States over subjects and protégés who are outside of their own Moorish state is unquestioned. If you don't have the protection of your own state, if you haven't returned unto the entire submission of Moroccan law, then by this court finding, which is an international court of justice, you're still considered a protégé, subject protégé, and you're bound to the United States and its extraterritorial jurisdiction, civil and criminal, of all your actions. So at the end of this decision, there's a opinion of Judge Shumo, which declares that the jurisdictional rights of the United States of America and the French zone of Morocco are limited to those provided in the Articles 20 and 21 of its treaty with Morocco of September 16, 1836, and that the United States is not entitled to exercise consular jurisdiction in cases involving the application to United States citizens of those provisions of the Act of Algeciras of 1906, which for their enforcements carried certain sanctions. The Act of Algeciras, as far as the jurisdictional clauses are concerned, was concluded on the basis of a kind of consular jurisdiction as it extent at the time of its full form and in complete uniformity among the powers in Morocco. The various provisions in referring to consular jurisdiction, competent consular authority, consular court of the defendant, etc., clearly meant that the jurisdiction which was being uniformly exercised by foreign states over their respective nationals as defendants in all cases, they did not mean such limited jurisdictions as might be exercised by the United States consular courts in accordance with Article 20 of the Moroccan United States Treaty of 1836 in cases involving United States citizens or protégés only. When, therefore, consular jurisdiction in its full form ceased to exist in respect to all the signatory states to the Act of Algeciras, the basis for the application by the various consular tribunals of the measures of sanctions provided in that act disappeared, and the ordinary rules of the international law came into play. Consequently, such sanctions should thenceforth be applied by the territorial courts, in the case of the United States as well as the case of all the foreign nationals. As regards reference in the Franco-British Convention of 1937 to the jurisdictional privileges enjoyed by the United States, it must be considered as a precautionary measure on the part of France against the possibility of the refusal of the United States to relinquish such privileges. In any case, the rights of the United States vis-à-vis Morocco in matters of jurisdiction must be determined by their own treaty relations, and could not derive from any admission made by France on Morocco's behalf to a third party. So France, acting as power of attorney over Morocco at this point, sued the United States of America for several issues, money, taxes notwithstanding. But in this case is illustrated just how important having your own state and jurisdiction is to protect the mores of whatever state jurisdiction that you claim is very important in protecting their rights. Not only are you removing them from citizen, subject, protege status, but you're providing them with the protection that only a state can give them. International laws apply to America just like it applies to all the nations around the world. And basically, it's a paper trail. It's a book of receipts that hold every party accountable for their actions. So in that you're forming your state, you're acceding to the treaties, you're putting yourself, or you're holding yourself, your state, your nationals accountable to all the same rules, regulations, and guidelines that every state around the world is. And you're communicating that to the international community and letting them know that you're willing to play ball on the same level playing field as every nation is around the world. Communicating that to, again, the United Nations and the rest of the world is letting them know that you will be held accountable to the acceded to treaties, and the nations that have already acceded to those treaties need to be held accountable in relation to your state. That's the paper trail. That's the receipt. Sovereignty and independence. Why is sovereignty important in maintaining the independence of your state? The formation and protection of sustainable freedom, equality, and justice in society depends totally on the exact sense of establishment of national sovereignty. Therefore, the basis of freedom, equality, and justice is national sovereignty. Freedom in our society and in our state is limitless. The elements, Constitution, flag, seal, elections, public inaugurations, and in accessions to treaties, declarations, and conventions ratified and promulgated with the United Nations that, again, put you on the same level playing field. And when I say you, I mean your state on the same level playing field as all nations around the world. Integrity of domain. Uti possidendi juris, Latin, as for as you possess under the law. It, this is a principle of international law which provides that newly formed sovereign states say they should retain the internal borders that their preceding dependent area had before the independence. Basically stating that you should just carve out the same footprint as the chartered colony had. No need to uh, survey your own territory because it's already been surveyed. But what you're doing is replacing that footprint with your own. Accession to treaties, declarations, and conventions. Ratify is to sign or give formal consent to a treaty, contract, or agreement, making it official that your state accedes to all the language in the contract. Promulgate. To promote or make widely known that these objectives have been promulgated within the organization, of these principles, ideas have been accepted by your state and acceded to, and now you're going to promulgate, which is to broadcast that to inform the United Nations, Madrid, Morocco, the Sultan, that you're acceding to all the language in the aforementioned treaties, that you're holding yourself accountable, and you're expecting that the other states around the world hold themselves accountable in relation to your state. Economic liberty without any inequality. The liberal free market viewpoint defines economic liberty as the freedom to produce, trade, and consume any goods and services acquired without the use of force, fraud, theft, or government regulation. The key ingredient of economic freedom are personal choice, voluntary exchange, the freedom to compete in markets, and the protection of persons and property. So by establishing your own jurisdiction, let's put together a hypothetical. You establish your jurisdiction. In that jurisdiction, you have 100 barbers, 100 hairdressers, 100 small business people that are Moors under your particular nation. By being under your protection, under your jurisdiction, they no longer have the extraterritorial jurisdiction having to deal with the regulatory agencies, the city, the state. All that goes away for those people. Conducting good business and being in conformity, you should replace that with some type of monitoring system that's regulated by your Moorish state. So not to say that there will be no regulation, but that the internal regulation will be conducted by your state, and the licensing process, if you choose to have a license, could be streamlined, it could be expedited, and will allow those individuals to conduct their business in a non-obligatory status. So without paying tax, without paying tribute to this foreign municipality. And that's what jurisdiction does for you, because you're able to create your own laws within that jurisdiction and govern your population, your constituents, your nationals as you see fit. You no longer fall under the jurisdiction of any belligerent uh, foreign power. And again, we do have to hold ourselves accountable and do good business, but we're freeing up our own economy. We're creating our own, and the term has been beaten into the ground, but we're creating our own Wall Street. We can keep our own dollars in our own community. Because again, in our jurisdiction, in your jurisdiction, whatever jurisdiction that you carve out, those merchants have uh, the ability to create an economy that feeds on itself. The dollar circulates 10, 15 times before it leaves the community. And that's how we create our wealth. Now, again, there are other ways. Um, by utilizing the CAID to tax the foreign corporation, chartered colonists, that's more of a longer plan. That's more of a longer haul. It's going to take some ramping up to get people to capitulate to the terms of the treaty. However, this, establishing your jurisdiction and regulating your own citizens and allowing their businesses to flourish in a way that feeds the community, one small business to another, and allowing, again, those businesses to operate free of interference, free of, um, you know, state, city, and federal taxes. That does a lot to further the cause for the Moorish community. That principle alone is worth its weight. Just to be able to create your own community under your own jurisdiction and have people create commerce and create their dollars. We are, as a community, as a culture, I think I heard somebody spit out a statistic sometime last week, but we are in the billions as far as the amount of commerce that we buy, purchase, the things that we do with our money, the vacations that we take, the products that we make, or the products that we purchase. That dollar is within the billions. And that's just in our own community. As a Moorish state, you're freeing up your nationals, your constituents, and allowing them to retain that dollar, to recirculate it within your community, and to build your coffers that way. In that way, the nationals of your jurisdiction within a year can be in a much better place. And it'd be all due to you establishing a state, acceding to the treaties, ratifying, promulgating, and then creating the internal law and creating the government that can help foster good economics and good practices for the community. And again, we're going to continue breaking down some of these terms, these principles, but I had a conversation uh, with a young lady, and she needed me to convince her that uh, being part of a state was worth her time. And this is the example that I put forward to her. just being without the regulation of and the chartered calling jurisdiction that we're in, state of Colorado, city of Denver, and not having to pay that annual fee, not having to uh, be under scrutiny by those foreign powers, which really that's just a dollar grab for them. They really don't care about the culture and the business in our community. They're really just worried about what type of fiat that they can pull out of our community year after year, and increasing those fees and increasing those the licensing regulations and squeezing out some of the smaller businesses in our community to make way for uh, the gentrification that is taking place. And without them being able to, again, regulate you, gentrification is going to slow because they can't close your doors. They can't squeeze you out. They can't overtax you and force you to shut your doors. That's the importance of a jurisdiction. That's the importance of a state. I'm not going to belabor anything. I want to wish everybody a happy Consanguine Remembrance Day. Hopefully, you took time to explain your family history to the younger women and the younger men and give them a sense of pride in what it is that they came from. Furthermore, I hope you set out a plate and remember those heirs, those ancestors that came before us in their sacrifice, giving honor to them and further communicating to the younger ones that is the same thing that your ancestors are made of, you also have access to. Those same talents, those same traits, all those blessings belong to you. And again, have a good evening. Have a good holiday. Redefine that holiday for your family, for yourself, for your mental. Redefine everything for your culture because what they think they've done to us, they've actually done for us. Islam to you all. Peace and blessings.